Morning, Zach.
Hey, buddy.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tripping Off podcast. Last week's email was very helpful. We talked about, really simply, just 10 metaphors that Zach and I use in our hypnosis sessions. Because the question I get asked all the time, and I know you do too, is, great, I knocked them out, but now what?
Right.
I got them into a trance, they are calm, they are zen, but now what do I say? And it's an honest question. And I really think this is where the script thing comes in.
I absolutely do.
I think that's why people want to use scripts, is because they get them into a trance and then they don't know what to do next. And so today we're going to answer those questions. And for those of you who aren't hypnotherapists, this episode will also be especially helpful for you because it will help you be aware of the stories that you're consuming and the suggestions that they're giving you, and how to even help your own narrative of your life story too.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so I think it's helpful for both.
With dreams, with cycles, with
Didn't even think about dreams.
yeah. With themes in your life. With the metaphoric projection of the unconscious mind onto real life.
Yes.
And going back to like what you're saying is like that is where we feel so insecure, which creates so much fear as therapists, but also as people, because our brains naturally want to just like jump to like making sense of something, and we're not really listening to the unconscious mind. And I think understanding metaphors and having some idea of like basic archetypal thoughts already in our head.
Yes.
Really help that.
And I was talking to a student just last week and kind of going over this. There is a moment of anxiety as a hypnotherapist. There's a moment of anxiety when you're about to start hypnosis. And a lot of people think of that as a feeling telling them they're not ready, I shouldn't do this, as fear. But I really have come to reframe that, because I still get it. And I've been doing this all the time. I get that moment of what feels like anxiety, but I'm going to have to relabel that, because I'm very confident in my abilities. I'm very certain of the efficacy of what I'm doing. I think there's this funny flutter feeling in your stomach that happens when you switch from conscious thinking to subconscious thinking.
Absolutely.
And I've been labeling that as I'm nervous. But I don't think I'm actually nervous. I think I'm just like, when that switch is happening in my brain, it feels like a little tension in my tummy. Is that?
Yeah.
I've never talked to you about this.
Well, I
Maybe it's different for you, but that's what it is for me, because it happens every time.
Absolutely. I think that I probably wouldn't go as far to say it's not being nervous.
That's fair.
But I think that it's not the nervous that I would say in so many other situations. It's not that either.
It's different than that. Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's like an anticipation. It's like being in a new space.
Yeah.
You know.
There's also an element of excitement to it, because I know
Absolutely.
that there's a lot of trust being placed in me as the hypnotherapist, and so I could see, maybe you could call that some nervousness, because it's like, I know they're coming to me and they're going to be in a vulnerable state of, well, they're going to be open to my suggestion.
Sorry.
They're going to be trusting me in my next steps, and so I feel that sort of pressure, I think.
Yeah. It's a lot like, this isn't it either. And maybe just us even talking about this is a good thing for everybody.
Oh, I think so. Because everyone feels it, and like Jesse and Zach don't feel this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah. It's like a graduation nervousness.
Ooh, that's a great metaphor.
I've already done everything.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
But I still gotta walk up on that stage and be presented in this way that's exciting. It's kind of uncomfortable. You know, you're in the gown, it's this special thing, it's supposed to culminate all of this stuff, you're supposed to have done it the right way, You're supposed to have made the good grades. And there's also this thing where it's like, I know in the back of my head that real life is getting ready to start.
Yeah.
And at every graduation that I've had, which I haven't been to all of them, have you been to any of them?
I've only had one graduation. Everything else was homeschool or distance learning. So I only ever had one. And I made a big deal out of it because it was the only one I ever got.
Yeah.
It was grad school.
Yeah.
So I know, yeah.
I didn't go to my grad school one.
Oh, no, I did. High school, we had to get to graduation, yeah. Yeah. We had a graduation in high school. That's true.
Well, it's like I have this like eerie thing that like the two that I went to, I didn't fully let myself be in the moment because there's this thought in the back of my head that it's like, I also know that real life is about to start. And whatever like the leeway that people gave me prior to graduating, it was not going to be something like that was given to me later on. Like,
oh, you feel that when you're about to start hypnosis.
yeah, like it's like this, like we're getting ready to get to real life, like something that's really big. There has to be care here. There has to be the space for the client. I feel the pressure. I feel the pressure to create that space in the best way possible so that they get as much as they possibly can out of it.
This is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen afterwards is we're going to have a tough conversation about where they went. Mm-hmm. The message I put on the Discord. And this is the thing too. Like
that was really funny.
Yeah, I have an experience of last week actually of like a client stumping me. Like it still happens in hypnosis.
That was a stumper too. I don't know what I would have said.
I posted it on the Discord. What was said? No confidential information or anything like that. Because I was just like, the client says this thing to me, and I was just like, great. Like I dealt with it in a positive way. I think that I created the space for them. They reported that I created the space for them, but I was also like, I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with it. Yeah. I was going to be like, do you feel comfortable sharing? Because they're going to want to know.
Right. Yes, I do.
It was just a phrase. It's a good phrase.
Yeah, the client's in a deep trance. I actually, the one of the things that I did in that trance was the thing that you suggested me talking about today in this.
Oh.
I did like the lady in the cave.
Nice.
And they're in it, and I come out. We're in it for like 40 minutes, and we're just doing metaphor and metaphor after metaphor after metaphor. And then the client comes out of it, and I do what I normally do. I'm saying like, hey, we can talk about this and process this for a couple of minutes. You can just say whatever you want to get off your chest right now, or you can keep it all in, and we can process it next time. I'm perfectly fine with all of that.
Give them space.
Yeah, and I gave him the space, and they're just like still laying down on my couch, like looking at the ceiling. Their eyes are open, and they're just quiet when I'm saying that. And I just give them some more space, some silence, and they just go. Sometimes you land in Cuba. Sometimes you land in China. Sometimes you find a cock where you expected a vagina. And then they just like go back to laying and staring at the ceiling. And I'm sitting to the side, and I'm just like,
yes.
that's great.
That's great.
That's I got stumped.
Yeah.
Never been in that situation before.
That's
like,
great.
I mean, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. You're not wrong. Happens all the time. Yeah, I think that's I'm glad we're sharing this because a lot of people get the idea that we're not nervous and don't get the butterflies still, or know exactly what we're doing, or have it all down, or don't get stumped. And it's like, that's not it at all. I think it's just you get more and more comfortable about when I'm stumped, I'm okay with that.
But I think that's what creates whatever that feeling is like, I think especially in our profession. I mean, Freud was right about some things. In our profession, there's such a, nobody ever says it, but there's still such a post-hypnotic suggestion that we always know what to say. We always have to know what to say. And that's ridiculous in my opinion.
And I think it can come across that way to our clients. It's like, oh, Jesse always knows what to say, or Zach always knows what to say. No, that's certainly not true. But I have confidence to respond in the moment.
Then create the space.
And create the space. I don't know what you're going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say. But I know enough to trust that we're going to figure it out together. That's really what it is. Yeah. It was a great story.
Everybody that's in the class thought it was hilarious too.
I've had ones like that too, where I'm like in the moment. I had this one guy who we were doing some trance work, and it doesn't matter, no revealing information, but I did like an arm levitation, right? And so I've done it like 100 times, arm levitation. I love that, and so it's just kind of, if you're unfamiliar with a hand levitation, arm levitation, you kind of put your arm on like the armrest, and then I give the suggestion that, like, as you think about the tension or the stress of work or your relationship, whatever it is you're in for, your arm kind of lifts and rises, and it's like the tension's building. And then we really feel all that tension, gather it from the body, put it in the arm, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let the tension go. And it's this big whoosh release of stress from the body. And it's really, really nice. And it can help with a lot of that anxiety stuff. So I'm doing this, right? This guy's sitting in my chair. And I was like, and you can notice all the tension. And his arm starts going higher and higher, lift it. And he's like this. Like his arm was shaking in the air. And I'm like, I've never had this happen before.
I've never seen that.
What am I going to do? And I was just like, well, I mean, I guess it's got a lot of tension. So I'm like, great. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He just goes, whoa. And like,
not only his arm fell, his whole body.
He just like crushed. And I was like, I guess it worked. But I was just like, well, and that's the thing. I think there's this belief of like, well, there's nothing inside your subconscious that's really going to hurt you. Everything's working together for your good. Like, we're just in there to explore and like experience what your mind has to say to you. And so if your arm needs to go this high, it'll go this high. And I'm okay with that, man. Like, if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. I had another one. We went, did a trance, and we were doing some inner child work, like some identity work. And so we went inside to try and find the identity, and they couldn't find it. I've never had this happen before, right? They couldn't find it. And so they go in, and it's just like a black hole. And I'm giving them suggestion after suggestion of like how they can find it or where it can be. And it's like a black hole. And they said it felt like I was in a car and it crashed into the water and it went down and down and down. I was sinking deeper and deeper and I was getting crushed and suffocated. And I'm like, well, this was supposed to be like a really encouraging, you find yourself, you feel confident about it type of experience. And it certainly was not for them. Right? And so I had the option here, right? I could freak out as the hypnotherapist. And I'm like, well, I know that's not it. And so instead of freaking out, I was like, let's explore that together. Like, and we had a really amazing conversation afterwards because I didn't freak out. And I was like, this is what we needed to hear today.
Yeah, it was.
And so it's like, you really feel like there's nothing inside of you. And you're like, yeah, that's how I feel.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, like that's it. I was like, oh my goodness, until it clicked as far as what the metaphor was inside of my head. It is that his unconscious, or her, whatever, their unconscious mind was sitting here saying, like it's not safe to have an identity that's my own, and I gotta dig deep in order to find an identity that's my own. Mm-hmm. Probably, I don't know this client or anything like that, but probably dealing with a lot of identity stuff, of how they have to be this for that person and this for that person and this for that person, and they have to be all of these things. And I don't even know the person, but that's that. When I hear that as a metaphor that the unconscious mind is trying to give to the conscious mind, this is how we feel. And then the therapist response is, "Oh no, you did it wrong." Mm-hmm. Well, now it's so important to create that space in that situation, because now what you could do as a therapist is be like, well, you need to create right now an identity to make it so that I feel better about myself, because the therapeutic intervention that I just created didn't go right, and that's your fault.
Yeah, see, now we're doubling down. How terrible. Yeah, that's really what it was. It was, And so I think this was years and years ago, but I think the ending of our conversation there was about like, it sounds like you really have to let go first before you can find yourself. And that's the scary part. And so that was the suggestion, is like, I really think like there's a metaphor here of you have to die to yourself first, this false self that you have. And your mind knows that. It's like we have to plunge into the river and sort of like, kind of like, the story about Hercules jumping into the river. What's the river? Thames in Hades. He jumps in to the river in hell. And like, the thought is he's going to die, but because he's doing it out of unselfish love, he doesn't die. And that's the story in Greek mythology. And so it was really kind of like that metaphor. It's like, yeah, down and down, deeper and deeper. I do really think I'm going to die.
Yeah, I mean, it probably feels like that. And there's identities that have been created to protect this person, to make it so that they probably do feel like they're going to die because they did feel like they were going to die before they created that identity.
Right. Exactly. And you don't even know the client, but you can hear it in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all that to say...
Metaphors.
There are many times, oftentimes, where we are stumped and nervous. That is not the point. It's just you get more comfortable at being stumped and nervous. There's more stories we could probably tell. I will share one last one, just kind of because this happens all the time. A resistant client who's way too much in their thoughts and will not let me put them in a trance.
Oh, goodness.
You get that one, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And so I think it's helpful. That one's so common, it might be helpful just to go over. Like...
Which one?
Yeah.
Right?
I get those ones who just overthinking, right? And so they'll even kind of like purposely sabotage, and like calm, relaxed, and they'll open their eyes and be like, should I do this or should I do this? And like, it doesn't matter. Just close your eyes and listen to what your body's guiding you to do. Well, I had a thought. Can I ask a question? And I'm like, no, you can't ask any questions. And so when that happens, and I've had it, some people are like a level 10 of doing that. Some people are like a level 5 of doing that, right? I think everybody has some in there, like nervousness and consciousness, fear. But those who are like at a level 10, I just start mirroring them is really kind of the way that I handle those situations. I'm like, it seems like you're really having a difficult time with this. Can you tell me what you're feeling? And so just mirroring back. And always having the suggestion and the belief inside of myself that there is nothing that happens in hypnotherapy that is unhelpful, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're sabotaging, that's great data for me as the therapist. It's like, wow, they are like level 10 sabotaging this. They are really fighting against any kind of connection with their subconscious. I'm going to talk about that with them. And I'm going to bring that into awareness. And maybe even like through hypnotic suggestion, intensify that sort of frustration for them. Because they're coming here to be entranced. But then they're not allowing themselves to do it. Obviously there's frustration in there. So just letting them sit in it, not feeling the need to fix it. Right? I'm not here to guarantee them a certain type of experience. I'm there to guarantee them that I'll help you touch on your subconscious. And your subconscious is scared as hell.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to touch on. And so it's not going to look like this calm, peaceful walk through a garden. It's going to look like just tension. And I know that the client is going to try and make that tension between us. And my job as a therapist is to say, hey, I see you. That tension's inside yourself. I'm not upset. I'm not disappointed. This is a really great session. We needed to start here. That's how I handle that. And I think it's really good to understand. And for those who aren't even hypnotherapists, handle yourself in that way when you have a difficult day.
And I think you're really good at that. And for everybody watching or listening,
Get the foghorn out. Is that Zach's method?
Well, I think that it's important for them to understand that you can use a lot of words in that situation when you're trying to do that.
Not the time for words. They're using too many words.
Exactly.
Very short on words for my side.
you do that with how Jesse changes his tone, all of the non-verbal, but also verbal, but just not words.
Lots of smiling.
Yeah,
Lots of
things that
smiling.
Jesse does to make it so that it's just like, it's okay.
Yeah, a little head tilt, a little furrowed brow, and a little smile. Be like, you're really having a tough time right now, aren't you?
Because what they don't get is people not engaging with that energy in a safe way.
Yes.
And however it is that they're being resistant in our session is probably how they're resistant in sabotage, like in their relationships. So the person that's like, well, actually, is probably doing that to their partner too.
It's probably miserable.
Yeah, but then the partner, they bring their resistance, and their partner brings the resistance, and then they're just like going at it. Where when we do, I'm not going to engage in that. I'm not going to fight their resistance with more resistance.
No.
And so I think that's why it's so important to do that, and pointing out if you watch Jesse or me, and I do it in a little bit of a different way, but watch.
No, you're great at it.
Watch Jesse like change in such a way when it meets resistance that's not defensive. That's not like we need to do this right. And then do something to create that space for somebody to be like, yeah, I am resistant. I don't like you, like, or whatever that is.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, what character is that for me? And I think the character it is my grandfather who's passed away. I mean, my grandfather, first generation American, he's black sheep of his family. His mother cursed him on her deathbed, like just miserable experience. Like had 4 kids, like struggled to make ends meet. Had a very intense job, and so he just saw all that pressure. He was the kind of guy who, when something didn't go the way it was supposed to, he just kind of like shook his head and laughed like this, and just kind of like tapped his hand. It's just like, well, that's how it went, and now we're gonna figure out where it goes. So it's my grandfather first, but the way that I think about it is like Rafiki from Lion King. It's just like he doesn't know where it's going. He's just giggling about the whole thing. It's just all silly. You're silly and I'm silly, and so I think that's really it. Maybe also a little Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah.
In there too. So that's the cool thing about Jiminy Cricket is like he's so small. Like he's not gonna do anything himself, but he's just like, I'm here for wherever it goes, and I care about you along the way. That's the attitude. I can't change anybody myself, but I'm here for the journey, and I've got space, even if you sabotage it. To know you're not going to be abandoned while sabotaging something is really important.
Well, I'll let you sabotage it.
Yeah.
If you need to.
I'm okay with that.
Instead of what I think that most people find in the real world is that they just go and do that, and then somebody cares about them so much that they say, I'm not going to let you do this. Somebody cares about them so much that they need to fix them. Somebody cares about them so much, which is actually not actually caring about them. And then it turns into this thing where they're meeting resistance in their resistance.
Yeah. It's very true.
So
having that mindset, crazy important as a hypnotherapist. But I think we'll also talk about, if you haven't gotten a chance to read last week's newsletter, please go do, because in it are 10 metaphors that I think are very helpful. And in that newsletter, we go through 3 different points, right? Great. You got your client entranced. They're calm. They're in the zone. They're in that state. Now what do you do? And in these 10 different suggestions I give of like different stories you can tell, there's three pieces. There's like what the story is and what it's suggesting subconsciously, a depotentiation moment. Each story has a moment in it when things don't go the way that you think they would go, right? You know, and then finally the post-hypnotic suggestion. And so those three pieces are important. So we'll review very quickly. Every story has an implicit suggestion, a moment when the plot twists, depotentiation, and then a suggestion for how you need to live your life differently once the trance is over. We call that post-hypnotic suggestion. And so when you're thinking about the story that you want to give your client, or even that you want for yourself, as you're going throughout your day or as you're in your session, those are the three things that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Suggestion, depotentiation, post-hypnotic suggestion, how my life changes from now on. And so I think we'll both share a story that we use a lot that's not in the newsletter, and we'll share kind of how those 3 points are taking place in that. Do you want to go first?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Go for it.
I use this a lot because I do so much trauma work. Not that any of this is not trauma work, but
it's a good trauma metaphor, though.
Yeah, this is a good trauma metaphor.
Yeah.
I like the idea of there being a cave. Deep down inside the cave, there's usually a fire or a sitting place, a spiritual place, a place to commune. And at that space is usually an old crone, an old lady, a mother figure. And I like this because in so much of the trauma work, what we do is we look at the trauma as the perspective from like, what do I need to do? And very masculine energy towards trauma. All the while, it's like we know what to do as soon as we tap into the feminine energy. No matter what your gender is.
Feminine and masculine as archetypes.
Yes.
I was giving someone a lecture really about feminine and masculine, and they were totally confused. They're like, "This sounds sexist." I was like, "Oh, okay. No, you're confusing cultural masculine and feminine with archetypal feminine and masculine. Every person has both energies. It's just like yin and yang kind of stuff.
And equally both.
Yeah. Google that later.
Yeah.
That's important.
And so there's this like mother figure that is at this fire that's there, and I usually keep it very broad, but I like this too because I can give this suggestion of like when you go deeper inside of yourself, that you will find the feminine way of healing, which is, in my opinion, the only way to heal from trauma. Tapping into the feminine inside of me. And so I'll oftentimes be very vague. We're going to go deeper into this cave, which is, so going back to the suggestion, there's this, the innate suggestion is that you're going down into the cave, going down into your unconscious mind, and there's a place that you can sit and stay and be safe, and it's real safe. And then there's this feminine character that's there, and depending on how the client is feeling and interacting with that suggestion, I usually say she's silent, and here's the twist, is that I think that I'll say something along the lines of, you probably know what she needs to say. I'm going to be very vague. I'm going to make it so that it is not my feminine for what they need. It is their feminine. And it's usually pretty startling. In processing it later, what happens a lot of times is that the person will be like, I didn't realize that it was actually my grandmother. And she told me this thing, which implies that in the middle of that, there was that twist.
Yeah.
And they already had the answer. They just weren't paying attention to it because they wouldn't go to that depth. And in that surprise of, yeah, she does have something for you, it also gives the post-hypnotic suggestion of how they can live their life differently.
Yeah.
And so then it's, I'll give them a lot of suggestions like, you can remember this. I like to do that is like, you can sit with this, you can come back to this space at any time you want. You have access to this part of you now. A lot of that language. But that's one of my go-tos, especially early in hypnosis, to where I haven't really processed with the client like all of their archetypes, because this archetype is so basic that it, like, everybody has it.
Oh, it's always good.
Yeah.
It's always good.
There's no like,
yeah, mama in the cave, that's everybody.
yeah. You can have a terrible mom and still have a healthy mom in the cave. You can never have had a mom and still have that archetypal structure inside of your head.
Yeah. That's great.
I've never had somebody have like an abreaction to, you know, an old lady giving them advice to better their life.
I have had some people who I gave the suggestion for, like, and you know what she's going to say, and you can listen to it anyway, right? Or like you look in her eyes and without words, she tells you, not with words, but through the windows to the soul. From soul to soul, she communicates to you.
Yeah.
And I have had some people come out and they're like, she didn't say anything.
Right.
All the time. Oh,
I
great.
have had that happen.
Let's address that. What do you do? I'll tell you what I do.
I mean, it depends on my reading of the individual, but most of the time it's just like, you know, like, I think that there's some work to be done for you to get ready to create a safe enough space for her to trust that you're going to take whatever advice she has for you. I've said that. I've said maybe in a process that I'm not saying it as direct, because we're like pulling it out and processing it.
Yeah.
But like, you know, maybe she doesn't have anything to say because what you're taking on is not for you.
Oh, I've never gone that direction. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Maybe like she doesn't say anything because she's like not ready for this to be fixed yet, and we need to spend some more time with whatever the issue is before we are called to a plan of action.
That's great.
So, yeah, what is your go-to with that?
I don't say any of those.
Oh, really?
No, that's amazing. I wouldn't have thought of any of those. No, I usually say something like, first of all, I'll challenge them, because I think that the conscious mind got in the way of what I was saying.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
that's, I like always say this. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I pause. And then I'm like, are you sure?
I have done that, and people have been like, oh, no, she did say something.
Yeah, I kind of give them the suggestion of like, well, that's interesting. Are you sure? Or were you just not ready to listen? And so I kind of throw it back on them to kind of be like, you probably know what she's going to say, but you just didn't want to hear it, right? So I'll do that, or I'll say, the other one I say all the time, and this is more often than not, I'll be like, and isn't that what you needed to hear? Silence, nothing. They're like, I am too busy. They're like, I do work too hard. I do not take time to just be in my own space. And I was like, yeah, I do put the pressures of everybody else on me. You need to do this, you need to do this. And I expected her to say, you need to do this, and she didn't. She just sat there and stared at me. I was like, and isn't that exactly what you needed?
Yeah.
And so I did. That's more often what happens.
And that brings up this is the last time that I did that, the person was just like, she just like looked at me for a second and then turned back to the fire and was staring into the fire.
Nice.
And then I was like, then what did you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, I was just staring at her. I was just like, what a great moment to just sit and stare back into the fire like her.
Just being together, man. Isn't that what it's about? Yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, the metaphor that I always use is the house, right? So if I'm like, maybe new client, maybe I don't know quite where to go yet, I'll use the house, right? And so for me, I've got like a entrancing sequence, you know, we're going in, they usually go down the stairs. And as they go down the stairs, they step their feet barefoot into the sand or the dirt, and they can feel it between their toes, right? And so then I just give them a suggestion to allow themselves to walk, right? It's like they're not even walking, it's just their feet are guiding them. And I give them the little suggestion of like, and each footprint is a memory, but also an intention both of where you've been and the direction that you're headed. I was like, I love that little one.
That's great.
Just right in there. And so it's like, they don't know where they're going. And I'm like, but then, off in the distance, you see a little speck on the horizon, right? And there's this moment where you can't tell if the speck is coming closer to you or you're growing closer to the speck. But I guess it doesn't matter because now you're there. and you're at the foot of this building. And it's starting to take shape, and you can see the outline of this building as it cuts its way across the sky. The blue behind it and the shadow of the building just cutting dark across the horizon. You step up to the door and you hear the floorboards creak, and it acknowledges your presence with a voice as the floorboards creak. And you reach out, and there's this moment of hesitation as you grab the handle, and then you feel that handle move, and it communicates how long it's been stuck there and the last time that it was opened. And then the door opens, giving you a little resistance at first, but then yielding to your intention. Opens, and you're greeted with this smell. Smell is important. I love smells because I'm taking them back to memories. I was like, and you feel the pressure of the air from inside and the smell of what's inside. And so then they walk in, and I give them a suggestion for furniture, and you can notice things on the walls. And I'm not describing anything. I'm just suggesting. You notice all the pictures. Didn't tell them what picture, how big, how many. Just saying, you notice all the pictures. You notice the books. You notice the kitchen. And then usually what I'll do is, depending on what they need, either I'll have them sit down and take it all in and let the house communicate to them. That's more seldom. Usually what I'll do instead, though, because that's one way, if they just need to be calm and sit in a safe space and look out the window, we can do that. So there's that kind of direction. This is why I love the house, because there's so many ways you can go. Usually what I'll do, though, is then as they take in all the nostalgia of this house, a place they haven't been for very long, a lot of people project their childhood home onto it. I was like, then you hear a noise, right? There's a noise, right? It's faint, it's muffled, but it's calling to you, right? It's just a weird noise. And so then they travel down a long hall, and there's doors on left and right. And there's something shiny at the end of the hall, and you can tell that the sound is all the way down at the end of the hall. And so they're walking down, and they realize the shiny thing is a mirror, right? So I'm giving a lot of suggestion here. Opportunities, left and right. But at the end of the hall is a mirror, which is a symbol for identity, right? I need to explore who I am. And so they see themselves in the mirror. They usually turn either left or right, masculine or feminine kind of issues. And then they open one of those doors, and inside is something or somebody, right? A lot of times I do this with inner child work. And so they open the door and they see themselves as a little child playing on the floor. And I always give them a suggestion that you get down. I don't know what they're playing. It doesn't matter to me, but you get down and you play with them. And you give them the love that they never received that you need to be giving to yourself. And that's usually the direction I go. Now, if we really want to go deeper, so we're already so deep.
Yeah.
If we want to go even deeper and they're really resistant and stuff, I'll have them pull down a book off of the bookcase in the bedroom, open the story and start reading the story, and then them and the child fall in. And it's like Alice in Wonderland. They go even deeper. So it depends on how far I need to go to access that inner child and that identity stuff. But it gets trippy. But I do love the house because there's so many directions you can go with the house. And the house is subconsciously a metaphor for your psyche, just in general.
I say that was important to point out.
Yeah, and that's very much dream work. So you can see there's the suggestion of we're going to explore the psyche with the house. There's so many ways we can go depending on what they need. The depotentiation.
Oh, you had 10 of those.
There's so many of them, right? That's
great.
You find out the house is actually a childhood home. You see your inner child. There's this long hallway of doors. There's this mirror where you see yourself, but you look different. There's this strange noise. There's this weird nostalgia. I mean, I've got 15 confusing moments in there that all reveal deeper understanding. And then the post-hypnotic suggestion is, I always take a moment to feel that experience of whatever they needed. If it's resting in the chair and looking out the window, knowing they're safe, we take a moment to feel that. If it's them giving their inner child a hug and playing with them without giving them demands, we take a moment to feel that. And so the post-hypnotic suggestion, I always say, I'm in this moment that you feel, you can access again anytime that you need it, because this is just for you. Yeah. And so I always give them that little piece so they can bring that back with them, because that's the point, right? I want them to have an experience that they can bring with them that leaves them changed.
Do you do that with most of your hypnosis sessions?
The house?
No, the giving them that, like, you can remember this, you can take something with
Most, yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yep. Because that's what hypnotherapy is. It's like, instead of talking cognitively about therapy, I'm going to give you the experience of what being healthy feels like, so that way you can take that out. I tell that to my ADHD clients all the time. It's just like, take some Adderall just for a weekend so you know what focus feels like, so that way you can do it again later on your own.
Yeah.
Because if you've never focused in your life, you don't know what that feels like. So just try it. You don't have to take it forever, but just feel what focus feels like, then you can do it yourself.
Well, I think that that's so important. Like, I was just trying to think about, like, what would be the situation where I wouldn't do that, or I would say just to a student, like, don't do that.
I mean, sometimes I'll increase anxiety feelings just so we can bring it up to pull it down. So I won't increase those. But no, it's always some, like, whether more explicit, and oftentimes I say it explicit because that's depotentiating. It's shocking, right? I'm talking all in metaphor. And then I say something, and this feeling you can bring with you when you're away from here.
Yeah.
I've been talking to them in the story the whole time, and then I break the fourth wall in that moment. And like that's a key part of it, because they remember that. It's a little shock value.
Yeah.
But yeah, always, sometimes I don't say it so explicit, but always the point is to give them an experience that they can take with them.
Yeah.
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 I just don't monetize it like Mickey Mouse does.
Well, I love. I also want to point out, like, this is. We're giving two examples of two different ways to go through that process.
Yeah.
Mine was much more, I'm building tension through continuing to walk down this path and, like, making, like, the one thing, the cave, bigger and bigger and bigger until it takes up all of the space. And I'd like for everybody to see that, the difference, because there's not a right and wrong way, and this is the beauty of that.
Yeah, they're very different.
Is that, man, when you were going into the house, like, I was struggling not to go into a trance.
Well, you're talking about the cave, and I'm over here, like, drooling at my mouth.
I know, like that's...
We're both easily hypnotizable.
Very. I was like, oh, man, and then I started yawning afterwards. Like, my body was just like, go there. Because the depotentiation, the suggestion and the depotentiation for you was much more of the distraction. I was just like, there's that one and that one and that one and that one and that one, and then what it does to the conscious
my ADHD
mind.
brain.
Yeah, but that's great for everybody.
You can't keep up, man. Bing, 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 bing.
I can't. Oh, now I don't want to. Yeah, man, let's go on this journey. Where are we going?
Yeah.
Or if you were just, like, so hyper focusing in on one thing, it does the same job.
Yeah. And you are great at that. Like, that's more your style of just, like, one thing, and I'm going to keep on this thing until you atrophy before I do. You're going to give up before I do.
My mom did say I was stubborn.
Yeah. Well, in the most benevolent, empathetic way.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, like, you've done that thing. I don't forget, you're talking about trying to give something. I was so gone. I don't remember what you said, but you gave a demonstration, and I was out. But it was like some fireball on your back, like, dripping down. And it was just like, you just kept talking about this lava dripping down to, like, relax you. And it was so long. I was so relaxed. I was out, man.
That doesn't work so well with partners. Just harping on one thing forever.
No, that's nagging. Subconsciously, maybe.
It's great subconsciously.
There's a romantic metaphor in there.
But maybe
sexual metaphor.
Yeah.
It's like one thing for so long. Sometimes it takes a while.
It does.
Hey.
But think about that when you're doing this work. Is like there's multiple ways to do, especially those first two steps.
Yes.
And it can be, and I think that's most efficient when it's either one of the two of, let's just continue focusing in on this thing. Let's continue focusing in on this thing. Let's continue focusing in on this thing. Or when you're going, hey, look at that. 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 Hey, look at that.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
But that's just me, right? That's authentic to my personality. So, like, it would be really hard and inauthentic for me to do it different.
Yeah.
And so that's the point. Yeah. Very cool stuff. Well, listen, go check out the newsletter if you're not subscribed. There's some great ideas in there. Hopefully those two give you a little bit of a deeper dive than the newsletter does of exactly how Zach and I use them. So now there's no excuse to get a client in a trance and be like, what do I do? That is just your own fear of the spotlight. And it's okay. I think there's a hesitation that's like, this is really important what we're doing, so let's pay attention. Don't let that deter you. I do tell my interns and students sometimes, it's like, I know I have a hypnosis client coming in, and I have to promise myself. I was like, you're not going to chicken out. I was like, because I'm really good at talking to people. I've done it for so many years. And so to be like, wow, we could just, just let the timer run down. And it's like, no, we're doing hypnosis today. And so I'll interrupt the client and be like, okay, well, we've got about 45 minutes left. It's time to get started. You ready? Because otherwise I'll chicken out. And so I tell my interns that too. Mm-hmm. Like, don't chicken out. If you know it's time to do it and you know you need to do it, put your foot in there, right? If the client doesn't want to, of course we don't. Yeah. But I don't want to be the one playing chicken. That's my responsibility. So be bold, be brave, go tell some good stories. Read some good stories too.
Yeah.
And enjoy stories. Yeah.
Especially the old stories.
For real. Some mythology, some Grimm's fairy tales. Love those.
Oh, yeah.
All right. You got your homework cut out for you. We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, anything left to say?
That's great.
I love it. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.